My name is Kristen Thorton Novis, and I live in Eastham, Massachusetts. I am a secretary at Cape Cod Hospital in the intensive care, and I'm also a photographer with organic photography.
When were you born?
1969, December 5th.
Where were you born?
Cape Cod Hospital. My mother was a nurse. She still is. And so she got the job there when she was pregnant with me, and then she ended up having me there, and now I work there. It's kind of crazy.
Did you like your place of birth?
I don't remember my place of birth.
Where you lived?
Oh, like when I
Like your
like growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I grew up in Brewster, so absolutely.
Did you ever move when you were in school?
No,
No.
never. I grew up on Governor Bradford Road in Brewster, and that was pretty much the house that I lived in until I went away to college.
What age did you serve?
All right. So as far as the military, I enlisted when I was 17. So that was 1987, and then I graduated in 88, and then I went in that summer to basic training, and I was in for 6 years active duty, and then, well, it was National Guard, so I did 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer, and then you do 2 years of inactive, meaning if a war were to happen or if there was a crisis or something was going on locally that they would need National Guard's people to go to, then they could call you in for another 2 years. So technically 8.
What made you want to serve at such a young age?
Oh, this is a good one. So, in 1969, when I was born, my Uncle Jack was actually not back yet from Vietnam. He had enlisted in the Marines at 17. And so I had heard about my uncle, but also my grandfather was in World War II. My uncles served World War I, Korea. Everyone on my father's side of the family, they were all Portuguese immigrants. Every single one of them went into the military. And so it was just something that, he was just very proud of his country and doing the right thing. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to go do that. And he kind of laughed at me like, at that time, not many women went into the military. It was like 1972 when they first allowed women to enlist into the military. So it really wasn't that long between 1972 and 1988 that I decided, or 1987, and I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to go in the military. So he kind of was like, whatever. I went by myself. I drove my car to the Marine base in Hyannis. And I was like, I'm going to be a Marine, just like my uncle, because he was a Marine, and I'm going to go do that. And I kind of walked in, and I was like, looking around, and the Army base and the Marine base are connected. And I was a little intimidated, I thought I was going to be I'm really tough. But I walked in, and I said, I'd like to be a Marine, and I want to be a police officer because I wanted to go into criminal justice and become a police officer. That was my goal at that time when I was 17. My goals definitely have changed. And so I walked in, and they kind of looked at me and said, well, you're educated, you're smart, I'd already been accepted to school. I was going to go to Northeastern University, the law program, and he said, maybe you should go see the Air Force. And there's part of me that kind of felt like it was because I was a woman, and there was part of me that felt like they were just trying to steer me to a place that might be better suited for me. So, that was kind of, is that a long way of answering that question?
No, you're fine.
Okay, good. But yeah, so I ended up going over to the Air Force, and when I enlisted, I said, I want to be a police officer. And they sort of steered me in a weird direction again and said, well, you're going to college, why don't you be a secretary, basically, which was an administration in the security police building. And that's what I ended up doing. So I guess the reason why was just to sort of honor my family in many ways.
How did your parents feel when you said you were going to the Air Force?
My father said, oh, well, I think you need discipline. And then my mother was like, what? No, my baby. And I'm like, I already signed up. I already did it. And part of it, too, is I was always a really competitive kid. I played sports. I was really athletic. I knew I could do basic training. That was going to be easy for me. As far as doing, she was scared for me because she didn't really understand that when I joined, I was going into the National Guard. And the National Guard was, at that time, you didn't go to war. You stayed here and you did homeland security. So we did things like if there was a flood or a fire or a national disaster, or we did crowd control for the Boston Marathon. And I worked in security police, and that's what we did. So it was more about kind of being here and keeping like America safe versus going and being at war. So I felt a little like safer myself, that I wasn't gonna like all of a sudden go somewhere terrible.
How did what was the average day like in the Army?
The average day in basic training, all right, I'll give you that first. So the average day in basic training is you're woken up to this really loud banging, and it's basically one of your TIs, they call them TIs in the Air Force, which is a technical instructor, banging on a trash can. Like literally what you see in a movie is what they did. So they would just bang it on this metal trash can, and you'd wake up and you would slide out of bed because you didn't want to mess up the bed, because the beds you had to do in these hospital corners, and they had to be super tight so that they could take a quarter and bounce them off the bed. That's how tight your sheets had to be. So you never really wanted to mess them up. So what you'd do is you'd like slide into bed like really like carefully. So like you'd hear this thing coming on, the crazy loud banging. You'd slide out of bed and fix the bed as quickly as you possibly could and make sure that it looked all perfect. And then you would go and get dressed like immediately. You'd run to your locker and everything was in its place, and you'd put on your uniform and throw on your boots and get yourself all ready. And at that time, it was Lackland Air Force Base, which is in San Antonio, Texas, in the summer. So it was about 104 degrees every day. It was hot. And then the very first thing we would do is they would send us to the chow hall. Now it was 3 in the morning usually when they woke us up, 3:30. It was early. But we wanted to get things done and do all of our running and all the crazy things we were going to do early before it got too hot. So we would go to the chow hall and get food. You had your tray. And you had to wait until they told you to sit down, and then it would be like a table with 4 people. You'd all sit down, eat your food as fast as you could, because they would all of a sudden be like, all right, let's go, you're done. And then when they said you were done, you just had to pick it up and throw it out and go back out to the yard. And then that's when we would run, we would do calisthenics, we would do all kinds of like exercise. That was pretty much what I remember doing. And then we would go to the classroom, and that's where we would learn. We would learn history of the military. They had classes and everything. So that's how then we would do all of that. And then it's funny, it's like a blur. That was such a long time ago. Like what we did in a normal day. But before we knew it, it was like lights out. We did a lot of cleaning. There was a lot of shining your shoes. There'd be times when you would be pressing your uniforms and just doing what seems like sort of like menial tasks, but they just wanted you to do everything like rigidly and perfectly so that you would just have it routine. So that was sort of basic training for me. I don't remember that much about it. It was like every day was the same. Yeah. You got up, you ate, you ran, you did, worked out for a while, you went to a class, went to another class, got yelled at a lot, and then, you just sort of did what they told you to do. A lot of marching, making sure that we're all in cadence. Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. There's one chant that I'll never forget, and it was, okay, so this is during the 80s. Ronald Reagan was the president at the time. I didn't know a lot about politics at that time. I just sort of knew that we didn't like Russia. I didn't know, I was not as actively participating in the political, what's going on now. And they would make us chant all these different things. Some of it was like, Air Force food is made for, it's like just weird things. But one of the things they had us chant was, my TI would say, good morning, flight. We'd say, good morning, sir. It's a fine Air Force morning. Freedom fighters, that is us. Killing commies is a must. No retreat, no surrender. Oorah! And it was kind of chilling, because I wasn't going to kill anyone. I wasn't going to do that. I was going into the National Guard. But National Guard did all their basic training in the same place as normal Air Force, and in the same, it was separate, but the Marines also did their basic training there at Lackland. So, you just did everything that everybody else did. But that was such a sort of haunting chant that I'll never forget, and that was I don't know, how many years ago was that? A long time ago. But at the time, it was all about, that was your mission, is to make sure that, America, was going to be, the force against Russia at that time, when it was Russia. It's not, So that was such a weird thing, but that's what I remember. So that was a typical day in basic training. Typical day when I was working, so after I went to basic and I came back and I was working, I worked at Otis Air Force Base, right here, In the security police, it's 102nd Security Police, and our job was to protect the planes. That was, making sure that all the aircrafts were protected. I would get to work 6 in the morning in my uniform. Usually I was wearing my dress blues at that time. You didn't wear like the camouflage or anything like that when you're working there. You'd get all dressed up in its blue uniform. At the time, I was pretty young, but I was starting to go to clubs and go to, see different music play and starting to get tattoos. And so I had to wear, like they had a skirt and a shirt and this hat that looked like a blueberry. I actually think I'll have to show you a picture because I didn't bring my pictures with me, but I have one on my phone. This terrible hat that was like a big ball. And they made me wear the long pants because I had a tattoo on my leg. So I wasn't allowed to like show that. And then I was like going to be really cool and have my nose pierced. So I had to hide it because I wasn't allowed to do that. And I had like a tattoo on my arm. So I had to always wear long sleeve shirts. So, and that was just one of the rules that they had. And they really wanted, in the Air Force to, be like professional, which was fine. But I would go in, I would wear my uniform, and I would go to my desk and I would type in, my code to get into the computer. And I would start to process in my job was to process in all the new recruits that were coming into security police. So I'd get their names and their social security numbers and who they were and what, everything that they needed. Did they have a uniform? Did they need anything? Did they have to go get their shots? Did they have to go over to the clinic? Did they have, what did they need to do? And I just made sure that they processed all their paperwork through. And that's what I ended up doing. So it was kind of a secretary job. Once I was out of basic training, it was nothing like, what I thought it was going to be being in the military. Did that answer it? Is that cool? Yeah. Okay, good.
What were some pros and cons while serving?
The pros to it was that I learned a lot. I didn't know how really to use a computer. I didn't really know, at that time they were just starting to come out, but I really didn't know much about that. And that was the learning that I experienced from like that standpoint, but also just how to work with other people and learning, there's always a chain of command in the military, and basically just being respectful and doing what you're supposed to be doing. And, not that I wasn't normally in high school. I was a pretty good kid. I was a pretty good student. I didn't really get in trouble or anything, but it was more so about understanding in a workplace, like my, superior to me was this sergeant. Now I'm considered an enlisted person. There's, when you go into the military, you can go in as an enlisted person, or you can go in as an officer, which means that you have an education, either first, or you go into an ROTC program, which is at college. So say you decide you're going to go to college and you do the ROTC program at school, you owe them 4 years full-time military after that, and you become an officer. And now officers start off being, I don't want to say way up here, but they already start off being in a management type position. Well, I went in as an enlisted. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to do what my uncle did. I wanted to go right, and I should have. When I think about it in hindsight, I probably should have just gone to Northeastern and gone into the ROTC program and come out as an officer. But I didn't. I was kind of naive when I was 17, so I didn't really know, how that all went. So anyway, so there were a lot of pros to it. I learned how to make my bed right. I learned how to shine shoes. I learned I could overcome a lot of obstacles too. When I, was going through and doing, they had this huge obstacle course that you had to finish at the end of the training, and it had, you had ropes that you had to run and jump and swing over pools without falling in, and climbing these giant things without, doing it a specific way. Everything was done in a specific way, and doing like a crawl underneath barbed wire, and getting it. I think I realized that I could overcome more than I thought I could. That there were things that they had flying cockroaches in our you'd be sleeping and you'd have to sleep with the pillow over your face while you were stuck like this, in the bed so you didn't mess it up, and there would be flying cockroaches because they had these giant bugs in Texas. I would have lost my mind. I would have ran out of the house and been like, "Mom, get the bug." But you get into a situation, you're like, "Okay, I can handle this cockroach. It's okay." So there are little things like that, but there are a lot of I didn't like to be yelled at. I was a pretty tough kid. I would debate with people, and I was always I always had an opinion. So going into the military and having people just yell at me and just tell me to do something. You know, like, move your ass. Like, I mean, they'd swear at you, you know? And having them do that, I had to bite my tongue and I had to just like not say anything. And in a way that's good, but in a way that's like a con, which is that, you know, you should question things and you should, you know, be able to speak your mind and you should be able to, but what they're training you for is if you have to go into a situation that is dire, like a war or, you know, something bad going on and your, you know, superior officer says, go do this. You just got to go do this. Like, you just got to go. Like, you can't think about it, you can't ask questions, you just got to do what they tell you to do. And that's definitely a con in normal life, I think. Military life, it's a little different. I'm proud that I went in, and I like the fact that I learned a lot, I got a lot of good relationships out of it, and, you know, but the cons of it is that, you know, when you're 17 and I wanted to go to a concert and I wanted to go here or there or do things, I couldn't because I had to be, you know, I have to, you know, shine my shoes, I have to have my uniform ready, I have to go. I went 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer. So in the middle of the summer when my friends were doing things, I couldn't because I had to be at the base. And you lived in the barracks, which is kind of like this, you know, metal, like concrete place. It was nondescript. And, you know, there's nothing at, I mean, at that time at Otis, there wasn't that much to do. So it was like, all right, I guess this is what I have to do. But the cons also are that, you know, the military, it's, I don't know how else to explain it. I think I lost my train of thought. Did I go off the rails? I might have.
You're fine.
Thanks.
How did being a woman affect you while serving?
Well, there were many instances where I felt like being in security police, working at Otis, there were 150 men and there were 3 women. And, you know, I was one of the 3. And it wasn't as if they treated us any differently. There was nobody that was disrespectful in any way. And I think that was the good part. But I think that we were automatically thought of as not being able to do as much. That's why they put me in a secretary position. You know, that was what you did. You were either a secretary, a nurse, you know, or a teacher. That's what most women got into at that time, you know. And so I think that was what, you know, was a little odd. But it was never the running or the, you know, I was much fitter than I am now. You know, it was more so just knowing that if I wanted to do something bigger, that they stopped you from doing that in many ways, you know. They kind of led you where they wanted you to go.
Yeah.
Do you recommend serving for our country today?
That's a really hard question. I absolutely believe that, like, if it's something that you feel strongly about, I would recommend it to some people. I do. Like, because I love this country and because I'm very proud of serving myself and the fact that all of my family did, I think that today is a different time, though, because National Guard now, you could go to war. If they decided that they needed somebody in Afghanistan that's in, you know, at Otis, they would go. So I felt a little bit safer at that point. And, you know, I think that now where I am in life, I probably wouldn't change too much, except for I probably would have stayed in longer. And the reason is because I would have had a wonderful, you know, pension. I would be retired by now. I'd have a good amount of money, I'd have security, I'd have all these financial things. But then when I really think about it, at 20, how old was I? 24, when I got out, I wanted my freedom. I wanted to just be able to go and be myself and not have to. That's a hard question. It really is. Because if I think about my son, who's 20, I don't think I'd want him to go in. You know, he wouldn't want to. He's like, not in a million years. But it would be hard. It would be scary. You know, I think it's very honorable to go and serve your country and do something just to give back. But I think you can do it in other ways too. You know.
Mm-hmm. How did serving affect you today?
I think it affected everything. My husband will tell you that I am really particular. Like, I will move things and make sure they're set up straight. Like, doing like things like this, which I don't know if that is because like you had to be so regimented and everything had to be in its place, everything had to be perfect. You know, I tend to have like a super clean house and a super organized everything. But people are like that even that aren't in the military. But yeah, it affects me in that way. It affects me because when my uncle came back from Vietnam, he had post-traumatic stress disorder, he had Agent Orange, he had a heart condition. He was never able to get married, never able to hold a job, you know, and he died early. He was only 60, and he died of a heart condition, which was what they're saying is either probably from smoking, because a lot of those guys smoked when they were in the military. But my dad, okay, so I'll like rewind a little bit. My dad was the middle child. His younger brother, his baby brother, was my Uncle Jack that went into the military. He also has an older brother that was already married. So when Vietnam happened, they only would allow one of the children to go. So there were 3 boys, one of them had to go. Jack decided to go into the Marines. My dad still holds guilt about the fact that he should have gone. You know, he had a knee injury from football, so they wouldn't take him. That my dad has, like, my whole life has been about my dad kind of like holding on to like this sort of guilt about his brother. And I think that, you know, I wish my dad would let go of that a little bit, but I think the military and I think the experience of the military and I think what happened has affected everything about my whole life. Like it's always been an integral part of who I am. You know, it's something that always kind of stuck with us, that you come to this country, you serve your country, you go to war. You know, my great uncle lost a leg. And, you know, I mean, these are people that like I grew up with. So you would think I would be running away from going to the military. Like, I don't want to be part of that at all because obviously it's not, you know, you guys all got really hurt. But they felt like it was a sacrifice. Like, you're sacrificing something so that for the greater good of whatever's going to come out of it for the country. Like, if our government thinks that we should be in a specific place for a specific reason. But for me, at that time in the 80s, it was all about, okay, we're going to go in and we're going to get rid of communism. We're going to go in and help countries that their governments are not being nice to their people, you know. So for me, I just really felt like it was a way of doing good in the world, you know, which it still is in many respects. But I think because I'm older and wiser, I know that we're also in places we shouldn't be, you know. But yeah, I think the military affects everything, and I still, I don't know, I still hold, like, I'm still proud of being in. Like, I'm still, I guess it's noble in a way, I hope. and kind of crazy in a way, kind of dumb.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you doing?
Are you still in touch with the people you served with, or anyone that you served with?
No.
Were you close with any of them?
There was the one girl, Holly, that I worked with, but I think the thing is that I wasn't in full-time active duty where I was living with people and with people all the time. It was only 1 week in a month. And then I went to Northeastern University, so I was at school. So I'd be at school and I got really close to the people I was at school with, and then I'd have to say, hey, you guys are going out for the weekend? You know, I gotta go back to the Cape and I have to go do my drill weekend. So I didn't necessarily build the great relationships with the people in the military that I did at college. You know, and plus, like, going to basic training, I grew up on Cape Cod, right? I grew up here. I had never really been that far away, and I didn't really know anybody from anywhere else. And you get there, and there's people from all over that everybody comes from everywhere. And then after basic training, you go to a technical school. So you kind of join in, but then you split up and go to different places, you know. And I came right back here to Otis, and I didn't go anywhere. I stayed at Cape Cod. Yeah. You know, I didn't serve anywhere exciting. Like, I didn't go to, like, you know, China, or, you know, like, I didn't go to, you know, England. That would have been fun. I kind of wanted to go, but it didn't happen.
Did society feel any different after coming home?
Yes. You know, there's something about the way that they do things in basic training which is definitely, I don't want to call it brainwashing, but it's definitely, it puts you in a mindset where you are so used to doing the exact same thing. And when you look at, you know, someone and they say, you know, Airman, what are you doing? And you're like, sir, I'm shining my shoes. I got off the plane and my father picked up my bags to put them in the car. And I said, sir, thank you, sir. Immediately. It affected I was so used to doing the same activity every day. I mean, I woke up in the morning at 3 a.m. and then went and took a shower. My mother almost had a heart attack. She's like, what are you doing up so early? And also, why are you taking a 3-second shower? Because I was always somebody that would stay in the shower forever, like before I went into basic training. But then when I was there, it was like you had 3 minutes. And you had to wash the walls while you were taking a shower. And you showered in one big room with 50 other girls. With just like a bunch of shower heads. Yeah. And so like you go and they put you through these things which really do, yeah, they affect you. It's kind of crazy.
Did surfing help you find other jobs, or did it affect your jobs?
Yep. So I worked there, and because I had learned so many computer skills by being there, and paperwork and administrative and all these things with the security police, I ended up getting probably every other job based on that. I think the thing is that when you do serve in the military, there's a certain aspect of, they do random drug tests on you every month. They do, background checks on you. You have to keep yourself straight and narrow, if you ever got arrested for anything, if anybody did anything wrong, the military finds out. They immediately get a notification, and so it keeps you it keeps you from doing anything wrong in many ways. But also, what happens is that you have to be a pretty, respectable person. You have to keep everything in a row. So when you go for a job, they really do feel like you must be a good employee. If you can be in the military, they automatically assume that you're a good person to hire. At that time, I might not have known much about what the job was all about. But when I was in college, I worked at this was one of my first jobs. I was doing my Air National Guard job, and then I worked putting comic books into boxes from 10 o'clock at night until 8 in the morning. It was like a night shift. The trucks would come in and I'd put them in boxes. And at one point, the boss said to me, can you work the weekend? I said, no, I can't. I have to go to my military training. And he goes, what do you mean you're in the military? I said, yeah. He said, well, what do you do? I said, I'm in administration for security police. He goes, why are you putting comic books in boxes? You're going to be with me. You're working in the office now. So he automatically gave me this promotion. And then I started doing all of their bookkeeping and accounting and all this other stuff that, I wouldn't have got that job at all. But yeah, even till now, I work in the intensive care, which seems to be completely different. It's medical, but I'm working in computer systems and doing things that I remember how, like the computer systems we used, and I still use some of the things that I learned, so yeah.
Do you own any souvenirs?
Well, yeah. It's funny. I moved several times after I got out of the military, and now I'm almost 50 years old. So, during that time, I never really kept my uniform or my, little badges or anything. I have a videotape, though, which is actually kind of funny, that they gave you after you finish basic training. It shows me on the obstacle course, hanging from this monkey bar thing. It shows me, doing... They basically took a video of everyone doing this obstacle course. So I have that. It's on a tape. I haven't played it because I don't even know what to put it into anymore. But I have that, and then I have a certificate, and I have a few things from then. 2 photographs, the photos they took of us. A photo that I took of myself. Yeah, a couple of photos. But really, as far as memento, the one thing that I do have is I have my uncle's Purple Heart, from when he was in Vietnam. I have that, but for my own self, I kind of once I had left the military, I kind of had left it behind, I just was okay, I'm moving on to the next phase of my life, and I'm good, and I don't need this uniform anymore.
Is your day-to-day life affected much after coming home? Or after coming back from serving?
See, the thing is I really... I want to say no. It didn't really... I mean, it affected me, but not because I didn't go away to war and come back or something, you know what I mean? I didn't serve this full time. It was, I don't think so. I don't know. I think I'm pretty much the same person.
Did you see anything really disturbing when you were serving?
Yeah, this is the big question, huh? during the time when I was like, if I was there for 2 weeks, like for the summer at Otis, like for a full 2 weeks time, there really wasn't anything super disturbing that I saw, except for the fact that every once in a while, they were doing 12 hours walking back and forth across this perimeter to make sure that the airplanes were, what were they, F-12, F-14, I forget. Anyway, I forget the model of the plane, but there were some of those guys that would be out there, and you just walk back and forth with your gun for 12 hours, making sure nothing's going over nothing's trying to come to get the plane. And they would get a little bit like loopy after a while. And so I remember one of them coming back and saying, "I got 5 ants." And I'm like, what is he talking about? Turns out that he was guarding this perimeter line, and there were these ants that were on the other side of the line, and when the ants would cross the line, he would step on them. I'm like, okay. But it kept things busy for him for 12 hours. But like things like that they were odd, but there wasn't anything that disturbing. I mean, I think when I was in basic training, they had these, you had to get vaccinated, so they had these cattle guns, is what they called them. They were air guns. When you get a shot, you get like when you get your vaccination, you get a needle. There were no needles in there. And it didn't matter how many vaccinations you had had before. I had gone to my doctor, I had all my shots, I had anything I needed to have. They automatically give you whatever they give you. You don't even know what they give you. So I guess in a way this was kind of disturbing. So you're in a line, you're marching, at attention, and they just brought you into this clinic, and they just were, I don't know, there were 4 or 5 people with these metal guns, and they just shot you with whatever, I'm not sure what it was. I assume it was a vaccination for something, but they just would, psh, 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 and they're air guns, and at the time, they, I didn't know what they were giving me at all. After, they have a record of your medical stuff of what they vaccinated you for. But the big thing is, years later, they discontinued those metal things because they're not hygienic. They were giving people hepatitis C because they were using them on every single, so say you've got hundreds and hundreds of soldiers walking through, that same gun, they had sterile process where they washed them, but not between people. Now, can you imagine, like, nobody would ever, you would never use the same needle on 2 people. It was sort of a similar thing. So that was a little disturbing just because of the fact that and there was one girl that kind of went really crazy in basic training. I mean, I thought that's funny, but she really I don't know if she lost her mind or if she was pretending to get out. And that was a little nerve-wracking for me. I was standing at attention, we're in our flight, waiting for orders, and all of a sudden she just really lost it. I don't know what happened, but yeah, nothing really super traumatic, I guess, but the ant story and the and the cattle gun shots.
Oh, what was the happiest moment when you were serving?
Oh gosh, the happiest moment probably was happiest moment. I guess it was basic training when I was finished. And when my mother, my father said, "Wow, I'm so proud of you." I think that made me really happy to know that they were proud of me for getting through it. My mother was also relieved I was home. Like, okay, you don't have to go back there again. That was, you did your 6 weeks, that's all it was, 6 weeks of basic training, and I didn't go to a technical school, I just came back to Otis. And I think that was probably my proudest moment of me sort of being there. But it wasn't really about them being proud, it was more so that I accomplished it, I did it. So many people that I went to school with, now I went to Novis High School, and most of my friends were really huge, peace activists. They were into, they were definitely not happy with me going. And so, I tried to explain to them that, I wasn't going to do any harm. I was there to do good, I was doing my role, not just for my family, but for the country. And, I was going to come back here and I was going to help things. And I think, they were not happy with it. So it was, but I got back and they were like, "We're glad you're okay. And you're not a different person." Like, they thought I was going to come back some crazy brainwashed, militant, really, and that, I'm still the same person. I still have tattoos. I still, I still believe in peace and love, and I still want, everybody to be happy and get along, and I don't like war. I don't want any war. I don't, you know, I think that we have a strong military to keep us from going to war, you know, and I think, you know, I'm still that person, and I think they were relieved, which made me feel good too, because I didn't come back. I was a little worried. I'm like, what if I come back really different? What else?
That's all we have for you.
Really?
Yeah, we just want to say thank you so much for.
Thank you.
Oh yeah,
For
I went on
doing
and on and on. I hope I answered everything okay.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm such like.
Yeah, you did great.
That's really hard. It's a hard topic because, you know, especially in the political climate we have, you know, had in the past 10 years, you guys have like grown up in a completely different time, like a different. It's very different now from when it was then.
Yeah.
You know, and I think, you know, also when are you interviewing other people?
No, you're just the other one.
Just me?
Mhm.
I hope I did okay.
Yeah.
You did amazing.
It's hard, you know, if you were interviewing my Uncle Jack or my other, you know, the whole story would be so different, you know, the
Yeah.
whole, it's, you know, and also some of the people that have gone, you know, into the military now, like people who have gone in the last 10 years, there's been so many things that have gone completely, you know, awry and wrong, and they've seen a lot more because they did tours of duty, you know. I didn't really do tours of duty. I'm glad I didn't do tours of duty. You know, I carried a gun for about 2 seconds. They showed me how to shoot a gun, but I carried a pen. People always ask me, "Did you fly planes? You're in the Air Force." I'm like, "No, I was a secretary. Really, I just did what, you know." There are so many jobs in the military that have nothing to do with, you know, going to war or carrying a gun or shooting anybody. You know, there's so many administrative jobs and doctors and psychiatrists and lawyers, and there's so many other things that you can do that have nothing to do with that. I think that, you know, infantry is like a very small part of the whole of the military. The military is gigantic, you know, but like I wouldn't want to be in now. You know, I wouldn't want to be called to go and, you know, hold people back from immigrating in from, you know, Colombia and Panama and Mexico. I wouldn't want to be that person. You know, when I went in the military, that's when the Berlin Wall was taken down in Germany. That's when, like, we tore that wall down. Now we want to build another wall in the United States. Like, it's just, for me, I totally don't agree with everything kind of that's going on now. So, you know, I wouldn't want to be in now. But at the time, I felt pretty good about it. Cool?
Yep.
We're good? All right.